Good morning. I can't wait for the day that I come up here and I start my presentation announcing a date on when we're going to start cruising. But today's not that day.
I have that for us today. I thought you told us that you were going to have that date today.
Yeah, right.
Oh, maybe I was dreaming or something. I don't know.
There's a lot going on. I'm going to go through some slides. They're fairly high level. I welcome any questions in any of the detail because we've been totally immersed in our efforts to get cruising restarted from multiple angles in the last month, just since our last meeting. So please feel free to interrupt and ask questions at any point. So what has been going on in the last month? I'm going to start out 2 days after our last meeting. We had a very short announced visit by the governor who came in on Friday the 26th. He was accompanied by Attorney General Ashley Moody, Secretary of Transportation Kevin Thibault, Senators Wright and Mayfield from our district. All the major cruise line senior executives also participated, and it was a roundtable discussion for about 2.5 hours. And the governor spent some time with the individual cruise leaders ahead of time. Some chairman was there at that point as well. I think can't remember everybody that was there. I know some of you were able to make it, but it was a very well done session. We had it at Cruise Terminal 3, and basically the governor was planting his pole on the ground saying it's time to get our cruise business started again in Florida. And the reason the Attorney General was there was they were looking at all options available to move the needle. That worked fairly well. Then we had another announcement that I'll come back to in my next slide. The following week, the CDC issued their Phase 2A instructions on technical guidance on how to move forward. That was widely seen as another blockade in trying to get the business back moving again. I'll go through that in a minute and you'll understand why. So a week later, the Attorney General filed a lawsuit on April 8th against the CDC, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the White House administration. Another development, just this past Thursday, Attorney General Moody filed an injunction on April 22nd for immediate relief from the CDC's conditional sale order. That was filed in the Middle District Federal Court in Tampa. It argues that CDC does not have the power to enforce long-term restrictions as an agency, not a regulatory body, and it calls for the CDC's order a violation. It calls the order a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act.
Before you leave this page, John, just real quick, I want to just shout out to the staff who put that event on in a moment's notice with very senior people, and that thing went great. Tons of news people were there, et cetera, et cetera. The whole thing was a nice. The venue was great, and the logistics worked out fine. So
we didn't have much time to put it together, but I will say that we had a great team effort. Everybody pitched in to get it done, and you can't ask for a better venue than Cruise Terminal 3. So on the cruise side, on the CDC side, the new phase of CDC's framework for conditional sailing was released on April 2nd. They tout 4 phases, but it's really 5 if you look at them. There's phase 1, then there's a 2A and a 2B, a phase 3, and a phase 4. Phase 1 was largely to conduct screening, testing of crew on board the ships, develop onboard lab capacity for testing symptomatic crew. All of it's related to the crews on the ships and to ensure that every vessel attains what they call a green status, which means it's been 30 days without a COVID or influenza-like illness reported on board. If they have that, the clock resets and they go back into a red status and work their way back to a green status over the next 30 days. So it's quite a cumbersome system. It's not every cruise ship is registered in the system. It's only those ships that have a plan to come to the United States. The list has gotten a little bit shorter, which I'll get onto in another couple of slides than what it was 2 months ago. We're now in phase 2A. Phase 2A was just released on April 2nd. This is implementing routine screening and testing of all crew, a plan for that. Also to develop port medical and housing agreements approved by port and local health authorities. And after agreements are approved, embark non-essential crew with testing and 14-day quarantine. One issue that a lot of folks don't realize is the cruise ships are, coming and going in and out of the ports. We've got 2 that have been, 3 at some points off of the Cape Canaveral that have been coming in on technical calls. But the way the CDC has this order in place right now, only essential crew are on these ships. They're operating with somewhere around 100 crew members to keep these big floating cities alive. So that is not what's going to be required when they start operating. Some of the ships that aren't in the U.S. Program with the CDC have more crew members on board. It's a lot to maintain these ships, and the restriction is the CDC restriction is trying to keep as few people on the ship as possible to limit any possible infection. What 2A does is it clears the pathway to start bringing crew members back. Now you think about a cruise ship, you've got Broadway shows, you've got ballets, you've got theater, you've got entertainment all over the ship. None of those people are on the ships right now. They've all been sent home for the last 12 to 14 months, and they all have to come back and train and learn the ship, and it's going to be a challenge getting started for all of the cruise lines. It's going to take time, but they can't bring those people back until we get through phase 2A. So we're 1 month into phase 2A now. We're working very, very closely with 4 of the 5 cruise lines. I think there's nothing here that's radical. It's not a legal document or anything we have to produce. It's a procedure, guidelines. We've taken the CDC passed out a checklist, and we've gone through the checklist with all of our cruise partners and decided who's doing what, and we're pretty much finished. What we are doing is the port side, and we're presenting that to the cruise lines this week and trying to work through this. But everyone's trying to work within these guidelines, but I can tell you that there's nothing easy about it, and there are a lot of parts of it that are creating worst case scenario exercises, for example, that are just taking a lot of time, and when you finish you realize that there's no worst case scenario that you can come up with that's going to create a crisis in our port. So I'll leave it at that. Phase 2B, that's when they start bringing the passengers back and run simulated trials. Keep in mind, when I reported all this on the CDC guidelines way back in November, I guess was the first time that these rules are out, the lines all have to run simulated, 1 or more simulated voyages with non-revenue passengers on board, prove that they can operate without a COVID breakout, and then they can proceed with passengers when they finally get to phase 4. Just to put a timeline on this, we started phase 1 on November 1st, basically, of last year. Phase 2 just started in April 2nd, so 5 months in phase 1. So if you apply some similar formula to the rest of it, it's not going to happen anytime soon, especially given some of the timelines between crude-only sailings and passenger sailings. There's minimum timelines in there, 30 days for one component, 60 days for another. So it's a tough act to follow, but we're doing it.
I realize these are just bullet points, but none of this administration is pushing vaccines so hard, but there's nothing on here that actually contemplates the fact that millions of Americans are now vaccinated. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, you're reading it correctly. I'm going to jump to the next slide, though, because
Okay, sorry.
for the first time, the CSO framework talks about vaccines. But, we put the slide up here on the right because that came from the CDC, what you can safely do once you've been fully vaccinated. And it's pretty free to start moving around and do things. But with this new framework came out, it's the first time that we've had any feedback from the CDC addressing vaccines. They recommend that all port personnel, cruise passengers, and crew get a COVID-19 vaccine. They did not mandate it, they recommended it. Port employers should encourage employees who interact with cruise ships to get a vaccine. And port authorities and cruise ship operators should consider hosting vaccine clinics for personnel. For those of you that don't know, Lester Bullock called me a month or so ago, and they ran a clinic down at Victory Cruise Line. He was getting his employees all vaccinated. We had about 53 of our port employees and family members and all down there, and were vaccinated as well. So we had that clinic, and that was quite successful. With the new CDC guidelines, we're going to host another clinic on May 12th. We're going to do it at Cruise Terminal 1. Parish Health is going to sponsor the vaccines for us, and our goal and intent is to reach the maritime community, our cruising community, the longshoremen. I've already spoken with Coach Callum out here to see how many of our porters we can get down. Anybody that hasn't been vaccinated yet that's going to be instrumental in getting our cruise business going, we're going to try and get them down. Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, shuttle buses, anybody that's going to be in contact with the cruise passenger community, we want them to come down. So we're hopeful that we'll have a good turnout. It's as you all know, it's getting harder and harder to expend the vaccine supply. So we're hopeful that we can at least get some of the folks that haven't participated yet, that are involved in our industry, to come down and participate. So with that, and if anyone has any specific questions on the CDC orders, I'm happy to answer them. I could talk for hours, as you know, after our pre-briefs. There's a lot of data, and it's hard to consolidate it into a short presentation. So just where are we in Port Canaveral right now? We've got Carnival, Disney, MSC, Royal Caribbean sailings are all canceled through June. Norwegian Cruise Line sailings are canceled through August of 21. On April 5th, which was the Monday following the CDC technical guidelines release, Norwegian Cruise Line submitted to DC its U.S. return to cruise plan beginning in July with fully vaccinated passengers and crew. They have sent 2 follow-ups that I know of to the CDC requesting a response, and have yet to have any positive or negative reply from the CDC on their concept for operations. World cruises continue to sail. The reason that CDC list that I mentioned, the green list, is getting shorter is some of the ships that are on it are getting deployed offshore. They're leaving the U.S. market for the summer, and they're going to be operating in other places around the world. Costa Cruises, which is a Carnival subsidiary, there are 3 additional vessels that are going to operate this summer in Eastern Western Mediterranean. MSC Cruises has 9 additional ships to begin sailing throughout Europe during the summer months. They have new sailings starting as recently as as soon as the next 2 weeks. Disney Cruise Line, the Disney Magic, will begin UK sailings in mid-July, only available to UK residents.
John, what kind of restrictions do the ships have that are cruising out of the U.S.?
Well,
The ones they hear that are safe.
that are going somewhere else, and these are all sailings that are reported since last month. I reported some last month. They all have very, very strict protocols on board. The protocols, there's a safe sail panel that is put together. It included Scott Gottlieb is on the panel, and they put the recommendations to the CDC last September on how they could cruise safely. Med Shipping started sailing in August in Europe. They've got a protocol of you get a PCR test before you get on the ship. 3 days before you get to the ship, you get an antigen test, you get on, and now you're in the bubble, and they operate for a week, and you're inside that bubble. You're safe. There was even one commentator in Europe this past week that said you're safer on a cruise ship in Europe than you are ashore with the outbreak in Europe. The protocols are pretty tight, and the cruise lines follow them very closely. And what you have to understand is, this is their livelihood. This is their business. They don't want people getting on their ship and getting sick. So if they can avoid it, they're going to.
So when the cruises open up in the U.S., these ships are going to be really pretty well organized in the procedures that CDC has required.
Well, these ships are operating in other countries. So
No, but the ones that come here.
the ones that
Disney,
the Disney Magic has been in Europe, and
the company will have been able to get
oh yes,
procedures in place so that their ships that are coming to the U.S. will have step by step what they need to do.
they already have the procedures. The procedures aren't that complicated, and the Healthy Sail Panel put their guidelines to the CDC, and they want to get back to work, and they want to get back to work safely, and they don't want a passenger to get on that ship and get sick, have a bad experience, and never come back.
Many times it's only the government that gets more complicated.
Yes, I think that's a fair way to put it. The procedures that they outlined with Med Shipping back in August have been in place now for 9 months. They've got 9 months of data. They can tell you exactly what their experience has been, how many cases, what they've done. I mean, they've got a track record. That track record doesn't translate to the U.S., unfortunately. So So what cruise lines are, most of them are public companies. They have shareholders. They have to earn a profit to stay alive, and they have shareholders that demand that. And, you know, you can't blame them for trying to seek other ways to earn an income during their heaviest season in the summer season. So this is what's going on. NCL is going to sail the Norwegian Jade out of Athens, Greece, starting July 25th. The Joy will be sailing from Jamaica. We can fly to Jamaica, get on a cruise ship, cruise to the Caribbean, and then fly back. Norwegian Gem will be doing the same thing out of Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, starting August 15th. Seabourn, another Carnival subsidiary, their high-end subsidiary, is sailing one ship out of Barbados, round trips out of Barbados to the Eastern Caribbean. That'll be home ported there. There's another ship sailing out of Greece for them in July. Virgin Cruise Line, Scarlet Lady, brand new ship, Miami-based cruise line. It was kind of unique, red ships, Richard Branson behind them, all adults, 18 and over. They've taken the ship back to Europe, and they're going to run it out of the UK. That ship hasn't sailed with passengers yet, so the UK, it was supposed to be Miami was the first voyage, but it's now going to be out of the UK. All crew and passengers will be fully vaccinated on that. Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas will be sailing out of the UK beginning July 7th. Vaccinations required. I reported last month the Odyssey of the Seas, Royal's newest ship, largest ship, will be sailing out of Haifa for the summer, Israel. So the ships are going back to work. They're just not going to work here.
And thus the thousands of jobs that are affected.
And the thousands of jobs, and all of the folks, the Bahamas are doing well. They've got two home ports that I'm aware of right now that are going to be operating. Royal's got one. They're going to be operating with the Hilton Hotel, and it's going to be the cruise terminal per se. People will go in, they'll check, they'll get tested, and then they'll be deployed from the hotel to the ships. They don't have cruise terminals per se in Nassau, but they've got a plan, and they're moving forward. And all those jobs that are clearing people and, you know, getting the baggage on the ships and all is going to be in Nassau, not in a Florida port.